Paltalk.com, the largest multimedia interactive program on the internet with more than 4 million unique users and now on demand on iTunes. I'm your host, Gary Baumgarten, and I want to tell those of you who are joining us right now at the top of the show, you want to be here at the beginning of the show on Monday because we will have a major announcement about News Talk Online on Monday at 5 o'clock New York time, right at the beginning of the show. You know, we have talked a number of times on this program about the issue of global warming, which for some reason that I still am unclear about has been politicized. My argument has been to people on both sides of the issue, who cares whether humans are responsible or not for the acceleration of global warming, or if it's a natural pattern? Isn't it prudent, as the first President Bush would suggest, wouldn't it be prudent to reduce greenhouse emissions regardless? And even people who say it's a natural cycle agree with that point of view. So why it has become this hotbed of political discourse is a little bit beyond. So we have had, as many of you know, people on both sides of this issue on the program. About a week ago, we had a scientist who claimed that global warming was not a result of the human condition. And just 2 days ago, Sebastian Copeland was here. He's the photographer and environmentalist who has gone to Antarctica, and many of you who were here saw beautiful images, but disturbing images of Antarctica melting as he shared his experiences as he made those photographs. He's on the other side of that issue, obviously. Well, our next guest I'm going to implore to, and it's, you know, we'll see how the discussion goes, rather than focus on who's to blame or whether anyone is to blame, I want to focus on what can be done to mitigate global warming and, by extension, make our world healthier and more environmentally friendly. You know, the U.S. National Climatic Data Center has declared 2006 the warmest year on record for the United States. And a number of southeastern states are facing drought conditions right now. We just spoke about the melting of the glacial ice. That prompted the U.S. Interior Department to propose that polar bears be listed as a threatened species. Well, in his book, The Weather Makers, our guest today, Tim Flannery, documents the global climate change, which he believes was accelerated by the Industrial Revolution. Flannery argues that the planet and humankind are indeed, but unlike others who have been raising this alarm, Flannery actually offers solutions. He believes, believe it or not, that CO2 emissions can be reduced significantly by 70%, in fact, by the year 2050. His suggested solutions are scientifically based. He is an internationally acclaimed scientist, explorer, and conservationist. He has more than 130 scientific papers to his credit. Tim Flannery, we welcome you to News Talk Online on Paltalk.com.
Thank you very much, Gary.
So, you know, you may disagree with me when I say, who cares whether humans are creating global warming or not? And the reason I say that is I want to get that out of the way. Because in my opinion, we can't talk about solutions to the problem if we're fighting with one another about what caused the problem. And that's what really excited me about your body of work, more so perhaps than any other that I have seen, because you actually are a bit optimistic. Everybody else is pessimistic. You believe that there is something that we can do to save our planet.
Yeah, look, I certainly do. But could I just say that it's important to recognise what we call the human caused impact on our climate, because once you understand that, you understand the nature of the problem properly, and you understand then the timelines that we have to work within in order to solve the problem. You know, these timelines are being set by the natural environment, and as we now realise, the climate change can get to a certain point where it does become irreversible, and that we would call dangerous climate change. So the whole idea is to act before that occurs, and I am absolutely optimistic that we can do that. We have almost all of the tools we need, in fact, to do it, and all we're lacking at the moment really is the political will to go forward.
Yeah, and that's what really gets me, you know, when this becomes, and I talked about it when Sebastian Copeland was on the other day. I've heard the conservative pundits get upset when schools suggest to kids that they ought to suggest to their parents that they use the energy-saving fluorescent light bulbs and one out to each kid in the classroom as some kind of political indoctrination, when in fact, if each of us just changed one bulb, there would be tremendous energy savings. Imagine if we did this in all the lights in our homes. It would be significant energy savings, I would imagine, by extension.
Oh, sure, yeah, and I'm always amazed by that, because I would have thought that fiscal conservatives and social conservatives would represent the value, or would value thrift and value saving and value efficiency. So all we're doing as we invest in a new light globe is doing all of that. We're saving ourselves some money, so we're acting in our own economic best interests. We're helping with the environment, and we're helping with education. So to see conservatives oppose that sort of thing just makes no sense whatever to me. My parents' generation that lived through the Great Depression and the Second World War knew very well that waste was a sin and that thrift was a virtue. And that's what we have to really start getting back to, that fundamental morality. That's one of the big tools that we'll need in future to reduce these emissions, is just to use the energy that we already generate in a far more efficient manner. And that's just a common sense thing from any perspective you want to look at it.
I mean, just the burning of fossil fuels. Who could argue that we ought to be reducing those kinds of emissions? All you have to do here in the United States is take a trip to Los Angeles, where because of the weather patterns and the valley that is created there, which traps the smog in, you can't hardly breathe there. And the only other place that I've been, and I know there are other places in the world that are similar, is Mexico City. People in Mexico City actually wear, I don't know how successful they are in filtering the emissions, but I see people in Mexico City wearing surgical masks as they walk down the street. I mean, who wants to live in that kind of an environment?
Yeah, it's amazing, remarkable that you talk about Los Angeles, Gary, because that's exactly where I am at the moment in Claremont, and the air quality here today is appallingly bad. In fact, as soon as I stepped outside, my chest started to seize up, and I developed a headache almost immediately. Now, part of that may be the fires, but a lot of it is just that fossil fuel burning and the atmospheric conditions we have in this part of the world. But, to return just to that, the threat of climate change and the timelines that we have to operate within, the best science is now telling us that we need to reduce our emissions from fossil fuels on the order of 80% plus in the next 40 years. Now, that might sound difficult. It's hard for us to imagine, for example, a global transport system without burning gasoline. And it's hard to imagine, for us to imagine an electricity grid that doesn't have some coal input. But that is the reality of what we're going to have to achieve. And when you look at governments around the world, you see that the most switched on of them are actually trying to do that. Here in California, we've had Governor Schwarzenegger now say that